All right, we live.
We are live.
All right, let me see. All right, there we go. Nope, that's not. All right, we live.
Yep.
All right, give me 1 second. So I guess this is we live in direct, right?
We're doing
Yeah.
it.
Well, all right. Well, all right then. Welcome y'all. Welcome to another one of our 360's wonderful discussions. Tonight we're discussing a wonderful topic, y'all. Critical race theory. We're gonna have an open discussion with my wonderful comrades. We have Grant and Tim here tonight. Isaac couldn't make it tonight, but definitely he has a lot to contribute. That he left some wonderful notes, so we're gonna definitely share. Um, so once again, like I said, we're gonna go ahead and have this wonderful discussion. You guys have anything you guys want to contribute? Hit us in the comments if you would like. Um, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's pretty much it. Tim or Grant, you have anything you want to add to that?
I think it's a very valid and valuable discussion. I became so frustrated doing the research for this topic and listening to some of the public comments or reading some of the public comments on critical race theory that were posted on the Facebook page. It's a very high energy, very high passion topic, and it's a difficult thing to discuss. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm excited.
All right. Yeah. I think we're going to get into this and have some great dialogue tonight. But before we go into the discussion tonight, let me talk about. We usually put it at the end. I want to talk about it up front because I think this is a very important information we want people to know. Sometimes people don't necessarily don't stay to the end. So we at 360 Collective are entering into the consulting space, and we definitely want you all to be a part of it. So if you're looking for services dealing with media, publishing, and consulting, based around our content, the type of things that we talk about here on the show, we love to talk to you, maybe your organization, whether it's a corporate space, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a school, wherever the case might be. If you are interested to find out more about what we have to offer, go to 360collective.online. That's our website, and you can find out more information. You can contact us by email, or you can call us. We'd love to have to be a part of the learning process in which you maybe involved in at your particular work, or like I said, no matter where it is, we're looking to get more involved in our consulting work. So, just wanted to throw that out there. So, all right, let's get into this. So, first up, we are asking the question to get into this conversation. The first question we're going to ask tonight, and as always, please comment. We're going to get into the comments as well. We want you all involved in the conversation. But the first question tonight is, what is critical race theory and where did it come from?
Well, I'll take that one. Critical race theory is a cross disciplinary intellectual and social movement. It was started by scholars. I think its deepest origins are actually in the law schools in the post civil rights era in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And what they were doing, these scholars and activists were seeking to examine the intersection of race, society, and law in the United States to try and discover some semblance of how race and racism have worked their way into law and policy and procedure and regulation in this country and have left black and brown people at a quantifiable disadvantage. Um, that's what it is and where it came from. It's really about critical thinking and critical theory and scholarly criticism rather than criticizing or blaming people, which is a conservative line. The conservative line is that critical race theory is trying to rewrite history and you know, excuse me, say that America is not the greatest country in the world, or couldn't be or would tarnish the American reputation as the greatest country in the world based on race classification and racial theory in this country. It's really a very, very, very big fish right now. It's a very hot potato, and people are making their political careers off of this kind of race baiting as far as critical race theory is concerned.
All right.
Okay. But in that, as simple as that may seem, were there any policies that people may look at that, Tim, that they discuss just in those areas?
As far as the policies?
Policies, yes.
Well, I mean, the policies. I don't understand. Let me just clarify what it is you're talking about when you say policies.
Hold on. No, I can't. One, I can't hear. I don't know if you can hear me. And can you hear me?
Yeah,
we got you.
Yeah, but also you hear an 8-year-old, maybe an 8-year-old in there crying too. What's wrong? My daughter's crying, so maybe she's having a critical moment at this very moment. But so some part about it is that what I also find interesting about what critical race theory is that when they're looking at some of the policies, they look at the, some of the disadvantages or how things work, like whether it be in hospitals, like how excuse me, in hospitals, how the birth rates are different between may be different between white mothers versus black mothers. You know what I'm saying? And how race played a part in that. Or you may like some small, like you hear like doctors may give, you hear like moms, black moms go to the hospital and they complain of pain, but doctors won't give black mothers the pain medicine. Right. But they will their white counterparts. Small little things like that. But if I'm in pain, your job is to heal me. Right. Small little things. So it could be some small, minute like that, as in maybe not giving me the Tylenol. Or I don't know if one of the founders of the concept, he talks about also something big as he talks about the Emancipation Proclamation, another law, another theory of even though that was the practice was there freeing the slaves, but it never freed any slaves at all. The Emancipation Proclamation never freed a slave at all, not one. So in theory, in concept, it's there, but none of these things really did anything to benefit African Americans or at that time slaves at all. So all those things, even though these are laws and policies, you need to look at these things and how they really affect, people and also the country. So these are what it means. But then also now we want to juxtapose that to where we are now and what people are calling race theory is two different things.
I think. Go ahead, Grant.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to get into the video, but go ahead.
No, I think that the scholarship behind critical race theory and where it came from is being ignored. One thing I read states that critics of critical race theory say it's based in storytelling rather than actual fact, or rather than actual historical significance as far as events and things are concerned. And I think they are overlooking completely and totally, as racist and white supremacists are apt to do, the scholarship and the accomplishments, the credentials, the credibility of the people who created this discipline or this movement, or there isn't enough of that being acknowledged as far as I'm concerned. It's just, yeah, the conservative line is, oh, they're attacking our history. They want to rewrite our history and they want to reshape our future, which all of that is true, because the history that we study now, as far as critical race theory is concerned, is his story. It's something that he wrote for effect to achieve a certain goal. They say they don't want critical race theory making their children feel bad about themselves, but I would argue that my education about African Americans in this country, beginning with slavery, made me feel awful, made me feel every inch of my blackness in the all-white classroom where I was sitting. So I think that line of rhetoric is illegitimate. We don't want to make people feel bad. All of my education based around my history in this country made me feel bad. Or
not wanting to be right, or when it came time to that point in regards to that theory, you didn't want to, depending on how confident you were in yourself, you didn't want to discuss that aspect of who you are because you felt bad. Because when you see pictures, you start identifying. You don't want to be identified as that. And, it didn't matter where or what. You know what I'm saying? You want to identify as that. And so then, yeah. At some point, I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel bad either. So why don't we just gloss over it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that becomes a problem for on our side. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. So at some point, we just got to address it. It doesn't mean that feeling bad about it, quote unquote, feeling bad about it is wrong, but the truth is truth, and sometimes you just got to learn from it, and the growth comes from that.
But they can't accept the truth of how vile the history can actually be and how bad it can make certain segments of the population actually look. They don't want that. They are going to great lengths to make sure nobody ever gets a greater understanding of the type of shit that they pulled to get where they are. They want the story to be the Great British Empire. And they want to teach the Great British Empire to black and brown kids all over the world so that they can maintain the status quo. And they still want to teach slavery, yes, because that keeps us, people like us, in a place where we're off balance and we're knocked off of our square intellectually. That's intellectual violence. But they don't want anybody being truthful about racism and white supremacy and the way that they move in society and the way that they have warped our political and cultural and social fabric. They don't want anybody to know about that. They just want to toe the party line. The Great British Empire, United States, greatest country in the history of the world. When it won't be just
you hit a point. I don't know if Brother Bell talks about this in this clip, but he also talks a little bit of something. You told me something about 20-some years ago about there's parts of capitalism. In order for it to work, you said something. I mean, you told me this 20-some years ago. In parts of capitalism, there's certain parts that has to be in it for it to work. I remember you saying that in order to work, you got to have a certain percentage. I forgot what it was. You said 20 years ago to me, but you got to have certain levels of classes, right? And I think he kind of alludes a little bit to this in the segment where in our society that in this society, for this level and for things to work the way that it's working, we gotta have these people beneath us, right? And so it just happened to be in this society. It just happened to be black and brown people. It's just that not realizing that, but the majority of white people not realizing that it also includes them too, right? But he goes more into that a little bit in that clip too. G, why don't you play that clip real quick?
Yeah, take a look at it.
Welcome to Upon Reflection. I'm Marsha Alvar. Derek Bell is one of this country's leading experts on race, racism, and the law. In the 1960s, he worked as a lawyer with Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP to desegregate public schools in the Deep South. He was the first black tenured law professor at Harvard, where he spent more than 20 years before leaving in 1990 to protest the law school's failure to add a tenured black woman to its faculty. Bell is the author of several books on the struggle for racial justice in this country. His newest is Faces at the Bottom of the Well, The Permanence of Racism. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Happy to be here.
Why is racism so indestructible?
One of the things I think is that we have mischaracterized it. We've misdiagnosed it, if you will. For years and years, we thought that racism was an aberration, a defect on the American scene, one that was a holdover from slavery, one that we had the tools to correct through law, and one that there was a desire to correct. And it's taken us a long time to recognize that that was a wrong diagnosis, that racism is an important stabilizing function, serves as a stabilizing function in a society that is built on property. And in a society where a great many whites don't have any property to speak of, certainly don't have as much as those on the top, what this society has given them from the time of slavery to the present is a sense of property in their whiteness, that their skin color enables them to somehow identify and live vicariously the lives of those on the top, as also through the soap operas and the tabloids and the hopes through the lotteries, and to feel superior to blacks who, whatever their status, are deemed on the bottom.
What you just said is summed up very succinctly in a paragraph that you use to open your book, and it's the paragraph that contains the book's title, and I wanted you to read that paragraph for us.
Black people are the magical faces at the bottom of society's well. Even the poorest whites, those who must live their lives only a few levels above, gain their self-esteem by gazing down on us. Surely they must know that their deliverance depends on letting down their ropes. Only by working together is escape possible. And over time, many do reach out, but most simply watch, mesmerized into maintaining their unspoken commitment to keeping us where we are, at whatever cost to them or to us.
As you mentioned, the way we viewed slavery has become a kind of mythology. And Gunnar Myrdal, for example, viewed slavery as an aberration in America's history, and racism as a kind of vestigial tale that would just drop away over time. And in the book, you talk about the fact that racism it's cyclical. It's not linear. It's not a steady dropping away.
Well, certainly the progress of what we denominate, also we use a three-syllable word, what we denominate as progress is cyclical. Most Americans say, well, it's not what it should be, but it's getting better all the time. Is that a Beatles song or something like that? And it seems to be at first glance, but when you look closely,
I think he has some valid points. Number one, that they are going to do whatever they can to maintain the status quo. Because if you begin teaching things like critical race theory and exposing what racism actually is and what it has done and continues to do in this country, then they lose footing. They lose some of that superiority. It's like, oh, actually, we have a trash philosophy that's harming people, everyone around us, including us, and they lose footing. So, and I think that that old two-step that they do is, if we give up our footing, then they will take over and do to us what we did to them. So let's not discuss anything remotely related to race or racism or white supremacy or the brutality that was used to perpetuate it and still is. They lose footing, they lose status, and they're not going to do that.
Let me give an example of what I think this whole what we're talking about tonight, based on a personal experience of how you can easily try to cover up the past. So, I know for some people they're like, "Why'd you do that on your birthday?" But I did. So for my 35th birthday, I went and visited a plantation in South Carolina, right around Charleston, South Carolina area. And that first time, I just wanted to experience what it would be like to be on a plantation. They do have them in the South. You can visit them. There are actually quite a few that are open to the public. However, what was disturbing to me is during my tour of the plantation, I noticed that there was some farming going on. And I was like, okay, they're trying to make use of the land. Now, it was used for crops, of course, at that particular time. I think at that particular area, it might have been cotton, sugar cane. I'm not sure exactly what the crop was in South Carolina, but I don't remember exactly. But they were still using that land to benefit off the land and make profit off these crops. What was disturbing to me, though, is towards the end of my tour, there was a corporate function going on. And so they were riding into the property up the long driveway to the big house in a horse-drawn carriage, and it was a party. What they transitioned this plantation, all the deep, dark paths of the plantation, all the beatings, and it was matter of fact, the owner of that plantation was known to be what we consider to be chattel slavery, one of the harshest slave masters you can come across, the ones that will put the big steel irons out from your neck, and you had to severe beatings, and there were rapes and things that were going on that particular plantation, and they were trying to promote it as a place to have a corporate function. So they totally were making this plantation into more of a Southern charm, if you will. It was more so like this is part of our history, our heritage of a Southern thing. Never mind the slavery part. It was more so about the land and the house and the historical architecture. Let's have drinks and have a corporate party. So they were trying to erase the past of the slavery historical aspect of it, but instead make it a more of a Southern antebellum, embrace their history. Because you understand, this is part of their history as well. But they don't want to include the dark side of their Southern history, which is why people still ride around with the Confederate flag saying it's more of a pride thing, but they don't want to have the attachments of what that flag really means. So this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about basically the brainwashing, the whitewashing, if you will, of history in order to make white people feel comfortable about the history in this country, as if slavery and these type of harsh things never ever existed.
Well, the whitewashing and the pride aspects resonate with me because I was reading some of the comments on Facebook yesterday before we got started and early this morning. And yet one guy saying, well, would you rather live in Gambia right now that has a median income of between $750 to $1,250, or would you rather live in the United States where people like, Henry Louis Gates can be an Ivy League professor and all this kind of stuff. And, he was quite perturbed that the 360 admin would not answer his question about living in Gambia as opposed to the United States, which I think is a loaded question because you answer the question, okay, if you answer the question, no, I wouldn't rather live in Gambia, then he paints you as a white supremacist. And then if you answer the question, yeah, I would rather live in Gambia, as a matter of fact, then he says, oh, then go leave the country, As far as critical race theory is concerned, I think that gentleman could benefit from at least a cursory study of what it is. And since I was tasked with saying what it is, let me just say this before I stop. It's hard to find out exactly what it is because you have to click quite a bit to get to the meat of the subject. Everybody wants you to pay for everything you get online. I know y'all shop on everything is for sale. So you have to click quite a bit before you can get to the meat of the subject. So there are very few people out there who actually really know what's going on and what critical race theory actually is, or where it came from, and what its true purpose is. So, that's one caveat of the whole situation right there. You can't really find out what it is. You can get a paragraph or two, which is good for some people. It just depends on what paragraph you read. I read some very hostile paragraphs to critical race theory. I heard the governor of Texas saying, and I think I already said this, that critical race theory is an attempt to rewrite history and reshape the future. And I'd just like to say to him, yes, both those things are true. But it's not a rewriting of history. It's an untangling of all the myths and the lies and the legends that have been put into history that are taught to make us feel that, the great British Empire and the preceding American empire afterward are really the greatest things that ever happened to humankind. And that's a matter of perspective, educational perspective.
I think along those lines, Tim, also is that understanding us when we just look at history from what it is. We look at that perspective of what that empire was and what it was, and then we look at what America was, and then we look at the foundation of this nation. So we look at terminologies. So at one point, like the term of white trash, white people coming over here was white trash to the British. So that term was a derogatory term at one point, because white people coming over here was the worst people of British. They were their prisoners. They were their people living on the streets. They were there, you know what I'm saying? That's what they were. So at that time when they were sending those people over here, they called them their white trash. So they were their worst. And we're still, and so is at some point their worst made something great of themselves, right? So yes, something happened. So some good came out of it, but we got to keep in mind that this 400, 500 years is British worst, and they still. I mean, keep in mind they threw this is British trash. I mean, so we got to call it what it is. This is British trash. And at some point, British trash got to realize maybe we need to stop holding on to it. So I look at this. Why do we keep looking at over there? Why do I care about what the Queen is doing? Why should we care? You threw me away, right? At what point did we reconcile? At what point was there a counseling session where the parent and the when did that happen? You threw me away. You threw me away like trash.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes into show where I mean, maybe that's a whole mama daddy drama that they got going on. White people got going on with that country. I don't know, but we got to keep understand that this is. I mean, you see it all the time. My mama daddy drama, and they in love with it, and they won't let it go, not realizing that country did them wrong, and they still want to suck up to it. But understanding that this is what we're dealing with. People who have some self-esteem issues, but at the same time want to treat other people the same way that the British treated them. Now they worry about us treating them the same way.
Yeah, and that's a two-step that they use all
The
the
two-step,
time.
exactly.
Conservatives, it's like, no, if we give them any type of leeway to take any kind of control, have any kind of influence in society, then they'll use it against us, and that's not necessarily the case. And I don't think they could really, really, really seriously make that argument. But they've been making ludicrous arguments for decades and centuries now. I'm a superior being to you because my skin is a different color. Makes absolutely no sense. you are inferior to me because your skin is a different color makes absolutely no sense. They believed it then and they believed it now. I'm talking about racists and white supremacists and people like Ron DeSantis and the governor of Texas and Donald Trump. They believed it now. They believe it now, and their ancestors believed it, and it still makes no sense. So much so that you can have scholars coming out of some of the most elite institutions in the country develop this program, develop this discipline, develop this movement, and they still look at it and say, no, it's illegitimate. Black people developed it. It has no bearing in fact or true history. It was developed by angry blacks and minorities who just want to reshape what we are, So that makes no sense. And then this is something that Ike and I have talked about, how whiteness and white supremacy and racism, they mirror mental illness, because you got to be crazy to sit up and deny the fact that racism has permeated law enforcement. You got to be crazy to sit up and deny the fact that racism influences medical practice. You have to be crazy to sit up and deny that the court system is biased against African American, black and brown people. You have to be crazy. So yeah, it's like a mental illness, man. It's like, y'all need to stop. Y'all need to take one of them, some reuptake inhibitors, and try to figure out where the disconnect is with reality.
And the thing is that, and it's totally fine. We want you to. We want you to heal yourselves for the point to become more humanized. More or less, we want to humanize you. Just humanize yourself so that you don't have that. You're not carrying so much weight on you to feel like you gotta be superior. That got to be a humongous burden. And there's no need to have that burden on yourself.
Yeah. They carry that. That's why I say it's a harmful concept for anyone it touches. White supremacy, racism, same thing. Harmful concepts for anybody that it touches. It's harmful to me because I have to sit up and look at this half-wit with a badge and a gun and 60 college credits at a booty community college pointing a gun at me, getting ready to take my life because he's afraid. That's harmful to me. Harmful to him because he's standing up here afraid that there's an educated, articulate black man in front of him, and his first instinct is to kill the brother, not to ask a question, not to de-escalate the situation, not to find out what's going on, but to draw his weapon and have a summary execution right there in the street because he's ignorant and afraid. So it's harming him. It's harming me. It's harming everybody involved in that situation. But you have the racists and the white supremacists who have accepted that this is the norm and this is just the way things are and the way things should be in perpetuity. So they're going to throw up every roadblock they can. Halfway. They're going to throw up every roadblock they can to stop people from educating other people about the brutality and the vile nature of racism and white supremacy and how they've worked their way into every aspect of American society. Racism deniers are like Holocaust deniers. And when you were talking about the corporate events being held at the plantation, imagine Germans holding a corporate event at Auschwitz,
Exactly.
Imagine
Right.
that. Imagine Germans trying to hold a corporate event at Auschwitz. We're going to have some drinks over here by the oven. We're going to cook pizza. We're going to do brick oven pizza. You know what I mean? In the ovens at Auschwitz, So, yeah.
And the thing is that we allow that. We allow it to happen.
Yeah.
We allow it. They lost. We're celebrating the losers.
Yeah.
They lost.
Yeah. They lost.
But we allowed them to get away with it. And we are celebrating them. I don't know anybody. Nobody will allow losers to. And so this is why when people say the greatest country and all that, but you allow losers to carry the flag. Y'all put losers on your back. I don't know any. I can't remember any team Michael Jordan beat. I don't remember. Don't remember any team Michael Jordan beat. I just know Michael Jordan beat him. But y'all, it says a lot about your mentality that y'all walking around here with losers on your back, man. And y'all teach our kids this to be losers. I got time for y'all punks.
In complete
Yeah.
denial. In complete denial. In complete denial of factual reality. In complete
There's no
denial.
losers.
Yeah, it didn't happen. And it's like racism and white supremacy are so intellectually violent that they're harming white folks too. It's harming white folks too. Like you said, they're carrying
Right.
mentality. You know,
And that's what I'm saying. I care about everybody. I don't want y'all. I don't want them to be harmed. I care about them too. Stop harming yourselves. Love yourself enough to tell yourself the truth. Come on inside.
That's what is at the heart of this discussion on critical race theory. They don't want the truth. They do not want the truth. You can't handle the truth. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to be involved with the truth in any way, shape, or form as far as racism and white supremacy are concerned, because they want to go with the narrative that the problems that Black and brown people have in this country are their own, and we haven't caused that. These jails are not filled with Black and brown people because law enforcement and the judicial system are systematically racist. They're criminals. They're towing
that's the beauty of the thought, is that it looks at why. I can sit back and say that the system is racist, but the discipline looks at why it's not. So when people are saying that the discipline is a study, it's a study. You know what I'm saying? That means that they're doing research. That means somebody's out there putting some hours in and doing the research to sit back and say, okay, let's see why there's a disparity between, or at what point did African American men become the largest people in jail? At what point? At what point it had to change, right? And that happened. Why did it change? And then that happened. Why did it change? And keep asking those questions. Why, right? And so that's the discipline. Not saying that racism or racists did whatever, but let's figure out why. Because if there's a policy in place at some point there, and the policy didn't work, let's figure out why the policy didn't work. Because there's a policy there. And so one thing is that, so they're looking at the policy. So they're looking at the policy of, look at Brown versus Board of Education. They're looking at Brown and Board of Education. That's a policy that didn't work. So let's study that policy. Because you look at Brown versus Board of Education at one point, and now look at schools nowadays. They're still desegregated. I mean, they still. I mean, you got black schools and white schools.
Yeah.
So something went wrong.
Still segregated.
Right?
Yeah.
Something went wrong, right? So
then
we got. So that means it's not the policy. You can't change people's behavior with a policy.
You got muted.
Oh, he's muted. He's muted.
You're muted. No.
You're muted.
He went out.
Okay, here, hold on. Yeah.
I can hear you now.
I can hear you. Hold on.
I can hear you.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just feel like critical race theory has gotten this bad rap from conservatives and ignorant people because it seeks to rectify and reconcile some of the damages that racism and expose and just dissect the whole situation. They don't want that situation dissected. They don't want any of that information out there. And that for me is what I can't understand. How come we can't study it and move past it? I mean, I had to dissect a frog in grade school, middle school, college. We did a pig, so we could understand the situation and how this thing works and what it looks like. So that when you see that pig, you know what's making that pig tick, How come we can't have that same discussion with racism and white supremacy? How come everybody who wants to discuss racism and white supremacy has got to be ostracized and become a pariah? You know, we go back to any civil rights leader you want to name, and Colin Kaepernick. Why is it that discussing this or bringing this to the forefront, the racism and the white supremacy and the hatred and the bigotry and the bias and the violence, why is bringing that to the forefront mean you are now a pariah, sir? You have no voice any longer. We will not tolerate you pointing at us and holding a mirror up to us.
I think it's a good segue to the next question. And by the way, I appreciate all those out there with the comments. I've been putting your comments so we can all see them, and we definitely are paying attention. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
but just curious though. So what do people get right and wrong about critical race theory?
Almost nothing and almost everything, respectively, I think. What do they get right about it? Almost nothing, because the information is hard to find. You can find criticism all day, volume after volume of completely free criticism of critical race theory coming from the right and everybody. But you can't find that objective breakdown of what critical race theory actually is from the scholarship unless you break out your wallet. And I found that out today. You can get the anecdotal paragraph here and there, but you can't really find out the grit of the situation unless you're willing to do some hardcore research. And people just aren't going to do it. People going to click 2-3 times. People have very short attention spans.
I think that's exactly what's going on right now. So people are just taking what they get from their politicians about what they exactly mean. But we do have a clip. You got that clip, G?
Yeah, let me go ahead and get that going.
It's inconceivable that a white teacher would be teaching white children that they're evil because they're white. But that's what people think, even though it's blatantly false.
And I don't know if some of you guys have seen this critical race theory. It's basically teaching kids to hate our country and to hate each other based on race.
Critical race theory is an intellectual sort of field that emerged in the late 1970s and early 1980s among legal scholars and lawyers who were recognizing that racial disparity was persisting despite the public pronouncements that all these laws on the books were race neutral. And so these scholars recognized that something was wrong here and that they had to take a new critical approach to examining the law, to examining policies, to examining structures which they recognized were the source of these continuing disparities and not what's wrong with people.
And what are some misconceptions around critical race theory?
Oh, there are many. That critical race theorists argue that white people are inherently evil. That's not true. That critical race theorists argue that everything and everyone is racist. That's not true. Critical race theorists would be the first to say there are people battling and challenging racism. And those are the people we should learn from. That people imagine that critical race theory is widely taught in schools. It's not even widely necessarily taught in law schools where it originated, where people want it to be taught, let alone in elementary schools. Another misnomer about critical race theory or even anti-racism is that it's anti-white or racist. And I don't think people realize that that is one of the oldest and most vile white supremacist talking points.
Teaching kids to hate their country and to hate each other is not worth 1 red cent of taxpayer money.
Critical race theory is not appropriate for our kids to learn and to have in our school systems.
I think critical race theory is wrong, and I don't think it should be taught in schools at all, and I don't think we should fund any money to allow that to happen.
When we think of racial inequality in this country, I think it's important for us to recognize that historically we've been arguing over why that inequality exists. And the racist position has stated the inequality exists because there's something inferior or superior about different racial groups, whether culturally, behaviorally, genetically. And the anti-racist position has largely stated that inequality is the result of policy and racist policy. So therefore, the problem isn't bad people, the problem is bad policy. And it's important, if we want to eliminate inequality, to identify those bad policies and replace them with the types of policies that can create equity and justice for all.
Now, if that guy, as competent and educated and articulate as he is the face of critical race theory in opposition to all of those so-called white folks, then critical race theory is obviously in trouble. And I think that's part of the reason why critical race theory is so controversial, because it's coming out of a place of black and brownness. You know, if it was coming out of a place of whiteness, it might be a little bit better received. But since so many of the faces that represent critical race theory are black and brown, man, I mean, I've seen it in the comments, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult for us to make any progress trying to appeal to the moral or intellectual sense of racists and white supremacists in this country. You're muted.
Yeah,
he's muted. You're muted, bro.
Okay. While he's getting his mic together. No, you're exactly right. And I think that was a great clip. I think it did a good job of explaining just that short period of time of just how twisted. And the sad part about the critical race theory has gotten politicized. When you got DeSantis involved, you know, spewing out all type of rhetoric that's totally inaccurate, that is where you know the line has to get drawn here. As you said, this was supposed to be taught in law schools. This is something that was born out of the law. The first person that we showed the clip of, he was the founder of critical race theory, and he was a law professor. And so it has now, because it has transitioned into K through 12, now all of a sudden you're teaching kids to hate this country and to hate each other. That's not the case at all. So when it became politicized with liberals and conservatives going against each other, now we have this argument here. You know, what's been exacerbated and totally taken out of context in what it was supposed to do. So what has gotten wrong is that critical race theory has now been politicized. That's the problem here. And that's just how we get these narrow-minded politicians involved that had no business being involved in the first place.
I ask you this. How much actual research do you think any of those politicians have done about critical race theory? How much? Not a drop. They haven't read a single thing because they don't read anything. They don't read the policies that they vote on. They don't read the 300 and 800 page manuscripts that are these bills that they go and vote. They don't read hardly any of it. If they did, they wouldn't have time for anything else. So, no, since this is coming out of a place of blackness, this is coming out of a place of black and brownness, They're not, and it's challenging the status quo. Anytime you challenge the status quo in the United States of America, you are a pariah, man. It's over for you. It's over, you know. So yeah, wait for my man to get his mic back on. But yeah, it's, and I'm looking at the scholars and the places of educating there, and it's being discredited as illegitimate because black folks came up with it. Black and brown people came up with it, so it can't be legitimate. You know,
Exactly.
Never mind that they went to Harvard. Never mind that they were Ivy League scholars. It can't be legitimate because black and brown people came up with it. You know, and it's just part of the white supremacy. There you are. And it's part of the white supremacy that we deal with in this country every day. It can't be legitimate work if somebody brown did it. And
yeah, I'm sorry. That's it. So that's the problem. So it's coming from us, but it goes into what you're saying. They don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is because no one's really clicking or doing the research to even find out what it was, like you said before. So that's the main thing. So now everybody thinks what it is what these politicians saying what it is. And what they're talking about is the elimination of this. I think Michael Eric Dyson called it a few days ago. The elimination of genetically, more or less white people are worried about being eliminated. Genetically eliminated because if you think about the numbers going low, being washed away, more and more every year. You keep looking at the statistics of every 10 years. You realize that at one point they might be the minority, and every 10 years, at some point the majority will have control over who's writing the history, right? So that's what we're thinking, right? So at some point, the history will be rewritten. I think they're trying to control this history, and they're fighting real hard to control this history by making sure that some of these things are lost. Some of the things are if you wipe it away, if you totally take it away, it'd be hard to even find it. Same way it's hard to find out what critical race theory is now. Imagine 60 years from now trying to figure out what slavery was. Because keep in mind, some kids don't even know the true depths of it, right? Even nowadays, in some history textbooks, they're still they're teaching kids nowadays that slaves were happy
workers. They just were going to work, hourly workers, right?
So imagine if they're saying that now, imagine what is going to be said 60 years from now, right?
Well,
oh
my God.
So this is why controls writing the story is very important. This has nothing to do with quote unquote with the theory of what critical race theory means. It's elimination of whiteness. They're worried about whiteness being taken away. And they're fighting that more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so now is let's tell the lie. Keep in mind they lost. You're dealing with losers here. And so a loser wants to tell the story of I won the war.
Mm-hmm.
I won the war.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what happened after, in 1776. I don't know what the British said after, I don't know if they went back home after we won.
They're still looking down their nose at the United States. They're still looking down their nose at the United States.
But did they go back home and say that they won? I don't know. I don't know how that happens or what goes on when people lose. But typically, you would think that you check it up. You take the L, right? But in true fashion, keep in mind, Trump lost and couldn't take the L.
Right.
He couldn't take the L. And he's doing everything he can right now to not, what I'm saying? I mean, it's in true fashion. So
look how the Western Hemisphere has treated Haiti. Look at how the Western Hemisphere has treated Haiti since Haiti ran them out. right? It's one of the poorest countries in the West. It's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, from what I understand. And they won't mess with Haiti at all for hundreds of years now. Nothing for Haiti because they ran them out because they were victorious. And we don't ever hear anything about that narrative. Nothing. Nothing. You got to find that out for yourself in college somewhere in the back corner of a library with a book ain't nobody checked out in 20 years, you know? So, yeah. No, you're right, man. They are trying to protect whiteness. And one thing that I noticed when we were in Detroit doing the project for Malcolm X is that all our monuments are gone. All our historic places are up to be destroyed, you know? The King Solomon Baptist Church, that beautiful, magnificent structure, they're trying their best to tear it down. The auditorium where Malcolm X was assassinated, gone. Several of them where he made his speeches, gone. You know, our history has no meaning whatsoever to racists and white supremacists. None. It's only their history that matters. I don't know if y'all have noticed that, but it's only their history that matters and their version of their history that matters. The minute you start trying to bring in something else, that's not real history. That's a story. That's indoctrination. That's not the truth, you know? So I go back to white supremacy and racism and whiteness, and I think Ike would co-sign on this if he was here, being just like mental illness, brother. Crazy. It's crazy. And I'm not saying it's a problem for all people, but there's definitely a large swath of the population that has been really affected by whiteness and white supremacy. And it's like this critical race theory controversy is a prime example of how people's heads are just messed up after centuries of this philosophy.
Well, I mean, I find it to be amazing, and well, actually not amazing. I find it to be unfortunate that folks don't understand how close we are. We're not that far removed from slavery. Like you literally have just a few generations removed. Like I actually have known someone whose great, we're talking about our great grandparents. You know what I'm saying? I mean, in some cases, depending how old people are. I mean, some people like my let's say my father's age. I mean, his great grandparent were in the fields. It's I don't think we can really fathom that my father's great grandfather was a slave. They're trying to act like this has happened 500. This has happened so long, or this is something like BC. Like, no, this is in recent memory.
Yeah,
we're talking about folks I know, parents or father were sharecroppers. Yeah, and which was only one. That's one generation move. You know, sharecropping was the direct effect of after slavery was over. They became sharecroppers. Yeah, so they still grew up picking cotton. Like, it's not. So what they're trying to do is basically rewrite a history that's not that far away from recent memory, and we're not even talking about the civil rights era, which is literally at our doorstep. You cannot erase that. Something that is only one generation removed, something that just happened 50 years. I mean, come on, 55 years ago.
Yeah, but it was so long ago, they don't want to pay any attention to it because they say it was so long ago, they didn't have anything to do with it. We were not enslaved, nor were they our enslavers. But at the same time, they want to teach you about Marcus Aurelius and the Emperor Constantine from 300 BC. You know what I mean? These people matter. These people were factors in history, but anything that happened to anybody else or involves anybody else, especially the injustices perpetrated by these people, that's not real. This comment I found very interesting from Tamisha Hill. She says, I'm finding lots of opinions, but I'm interested in making an informed decision on whether to support or refute the validity of CRT. Yeah, you're going to have to pay some money, buy some books, do some research on your own, because all you're going to get off the internet is Fox News and CNN, and they're not going to tell you anything worth hearing. As far as you have to do that research for yourself. But I agree, and I'm very, very happy that you are trying to make an informed decision. I was studying this stuff 30 years ago. This ain't new. This stuff was born in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I studied it in the 90s. I've made my decision. So I hope that you are able to find the information that you seek and you can make an informed decision as well.
Yeah, I don't think we called it. I think maybe that was a discipline in which it's being called now. I think when we were together at the university level, it was just our thing. You know what I'm saying? The whole discipline was all our study. You know what I'm saying? We were just getting together, talking and whatever. It encompassed all our communication, all our talks. But I would tell her like Derek Bell, he's one of the authors of the discipline. But like I said, it is coming from the 70s, 80s. So I know that is there. I know there's a few podcasts that's out there that a few classes. There's a few classes being taught. There's a few classes being taught that they have podcasts that's out right now that are being taught that's on a podcast on that. But keep in mind, these are level 600, 700 level classes. And so that for the discipline, these are college courses. They're looking at policies and how policies are effective or not effective. How talking points, when they're talking about race, is something totally different. You're just talking about politicians talking about education and not wanting white people to feel guilty or black people to feel superior to themselves, to white people about things that happened in the past. That's the talking points of what people are talking about today. But the discipline is something totally different. And Derek Bell and some other people are talking about something totally different. And we're gonna dig deeper more into this topic for the next couple of weeks also. So I mean, please check back in for the next few weeks. Not next week, because next week we're gonna be talking about celebrating Malcolm X, but definitely the week after that, and the week after that we're gonna dive a little bit more deeper into critical race theory. But definitely, it's a few things out there, but we're gonna help people out to find some information. But I think that it really became a big issue when that book 1619 Project came out, and that's when a lot of stuff hit the fan. I think that came out COVID time. People had some time to read, and it was just a lot of stories about about slavery and those type of things, and people just had some time to read, and people just in their emotions, and people, once again, people responded back. But we'll probably go into that in 2 weeks about 1619 Project. We'll probably do that in 2 weeks. We did have a question that Brother Isaac responded back to. His question was, should I care about critical race theories? And his answer to that question was, yes, you should care, because white supremacist advocates are organizing to stop any attempt to confront racism. Here's an example. You got that clip, G?
Hold on, keep going. I'm just trying to see if I can find that one. Is that that's on his part?
Yeah, number 1.
I am reading some amazing comments out here.
You want to go through some of those?
While
you find that clip?
Amazing comments out here. It's really telling, man. Some of the people are saying. Let's see. I'm trying to find one that I thought was really great. Okay. Is racism in the U.S. systematic or not? According to CRT ideology, it's a resounding yes. We are raised to think it's it's the one-offs that are racist, but not people that also benefit from the racist being racist. Oh wow, I just lost it. Europeans gaslight us into thinking our grievances are a figment of our imagination. After all, you weren't enslaved, nor was I an enslaver. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Your own people captured you anyway. What person with a soul actually says these things? Racists say those things all day. And I think that, there was a comment on Facebook, and that comment was Katina Williams. Thank you, Katina Williams, for that comment. I was, like I said, I was reading and responding to some of the comments on Facebook, and there was the guy who wanted us to answer the question of whether or not we would rather live in Gambia or one of the other African countries where the most of the slaves came from in the United States, according to him. And the question to me, when we're discussing comments, is in and of itself unanswerable. It should just really be ignored, but then under that old philosophy that there's no such thing as a stupid question, I want to answer his question now. Yeah, I'd rather live elsewhere, but why should I? Because this is my country, and I'd rather stay here and fix this one. I fought for this country in combat on 2 occasions. Okay, so I'm gonna stay right here. I'm gonna fix this country. So no, I would rather live in Gambia or somewhere like that where it's beautiful and pristine and tropical and all that kind of stuff. But nah, I'm not leaving. This is mine, bro, just as much as it is yours. So for you to even ask me that question, or anyone that question, would we rather live elsewhere, is ignorant and somewhat jingoistically racist. So nah, I'm not going.
It comes from that supremic framework. Keep in mind, if keep in mind how everybody else came here, you were dropped off here because you were dropped off here like trash. People remember that, dropped off like trash. Most white people were dropped off like trash when they got here. So keep that in mind. Dropped off like white trash. So that's first. But the investment that we have, there's nobody that have a bigger investment than we have in this country. So why do I have to leave it?
Yeah, this is mine. This is mine. My family, our family, our ancestors. We all share a common ancestor. Our ancestors built this country, white and black. These are my ancestors too. We all share a common ancestor. I'm not going to deny half of my ancestry or part of my ancestry just because some white person said so. Carl Linnaeus said I'm not white. You know what I mean? I'm all of these things, and I got the DNA to prove it. I'm all of these things, So you can't separate me from you or you from me based on whiteness or blackness. This is my country just as much as it is anybody else's, and it's my responsibility, just like everybody else's responsibility, to get it right. There's a lot of things.
That's it. That's it. So that's it. People worrying about, we're gonna treat them like they treated us. We never presented ourselves that way.
Mm-hmm.
We've never presented ourselves that way. That you have to worry about how we're going to treat us. Never been that. They've never been that way. We've never said, okay, you got to worry about how we never. That we just want to be treat us as the word is written. Yeah. There's never been a person that loves America more than we love America. We have fought for the country and to come back to it and still not be respected. You show me where? Who else? Who's fought for it, died for it, and comes back to it, and to be second-class citizens. You show me who. Or show me who built it, invested the blood, sweat, and tears, and still hasn't received.
Nope.
You tell me who.
Nope. And still refuse to leave. Ain't going nowhere. I'm not leaving.
But be threatened, but constantly threatened to go somewhere else. Constantly lied to. With policies, as in why there's critical rights theories. Policies that said, no, we're going to make it better for you because we see the investment you have made into the country, right? We see what you gave us. We see how you have invested and made the country better. We're gonna lie. We're gonna lie to this policy. We'll lie with this policy, and you renege. So why do I gotta leave? Maybe you should leave for lying. But also in this, he says, Derek Bell says in an interview, but America, even with these policies, America has never given anything to the African American that it also did not give to the majority of its other citizens. There was nothing that it also didn't give to everybody else.
Right.
So you think about like civil rights. What else was in civil rights? The Women's Act, right? When something like that, I mean, so you think about things like that, it benefited everybody else. It wasn't nothing that was just there for just black people.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that the critical race discussion on critical race theory and these issues that surround it, as far as those who deny it, Tamisha Hill, I wanted to just address your latest comment. Does curriculum force our children to believe that systematic oppression is as it should be, or does it actually delve into the flawed ideologies behind that thought process and the foundation of fear that it stemmed from? I think the answer to your question is the latter. These things are critical race theory is coming from a place of very, very deep, very, very credible scholarship. It is, and like I said, we studied these things. We studied these things a long time ago. This isn't new. So, yeah, the answer to your question is the latter. It's definitely the latter. And I hope that you do continue to look into it because. And then, Murray, back to your point, yeah, we have an incredible investment in this country. Incredible. I have 2 combat campaigns invested in this country and a lifetime of education and struggle and suffering to go along with it. So I'm not going anywhere. We know this. Most of us who have studied these things, we know the investment that blacks have made in this country and why we should not leave. And I mean, that boils down to the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe. I mean, there are no aspects of American society where black and brown people have not made incredibly significant contributions, but we have never been given credit for hardly any of it. You know, maybe once a year, Black History Month roll around, we talk about Elijah McCoy. You know what I mean? But that's about it. We have never been given our just due in this country, and we never will if we don't maintain the vigil, which is what we're doing right now, and have these conversations and bring like-minded people together. And that's why I'm so glad you guys invited me to be a part of this, because I thought I was walking around by myself dissatisfied. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
You get that feeling. You get that feeling if you don't bring like-minded people together, and in an uncensored kind of way. Man, I'm glad y'all are here.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's never about making them feel bad or people feel bad, but it goes both ways. As we also, I mean, if we talk about white supremacy, we also need to talk about black inferiority. You know what I'm saying? It goes both ways, and we got to talk about how African Americans feel and they think, and how we elevate that, our actions, things that we do that could be destructive, and how things that we can do to be better and make a decision that make sure that are productive. At the same time, with those things and pointing out those things that maybe things that are not productive, and how our counterparts are doing some of the things that maybe they're doing that they don't know that they honestly don't know that they're doing. You know, I think we was having some of those discussions. A couple of weeks ago when we were in Detroit, just dealing with gentrification. You know, just dealing with gentrification and those type of things. We also were having those discussions with, even a few weeks ago, just dealing with Wells Fargo Bank and talking about how us not realizing, even though everything may seem well, still banks are denying black and brown people loans. You know, and so with those loans, that means some people, as school is ending, and maybe in a few months, some families are struggling now, trying to figure out how do they send their kids back to school, because you know what? As some people down the street might have got some money to send their kids to school, Isaiah and I'm trying to find my typical black name, Isaiah, and throw me one out there. Throw me one. Rakim didn't get one. You know what I'm saying? Rakim didn't get one. Shaniqua didn't get the loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, Jimmy and John did, and so that's where the discipline comes into place. It's like, why is that? Why is that still happening when there's laws in place that's supposed to have been in place to stop that? Or like you said, Tim, before, or I fought in wars that said there's a loan for me to that's available for me to have that. Why didn't I get it? Or, you know, is those type of things. But I'm supposed to forget it. But for me bringing it up, it's making somebody feel bad. But Isaiah and Rakim is feeling bad because they can't go to school. But if I say something, somebody said Malik. But if I say something, Malik can't go to school. So what am I supposed to do? Be quiet because they, you know what I'm saying? What am I supposed to do? And as a parent or whatever, you fight so Malik goes to school, and I can't worry about them no more. I gotta fight for mine. And if they feel bad, so what? But how long do we sit back and let Malik not do what God told him to do? And so that's where that black inferiority is, to the point where, fuck it, we gotta fight. Or burn this bitch down.
Okay.
It's ours, right? If it's ours, we do what we want to with it.
Right.
Hey, whatever. Let me stop.
No, man.
No, it's a safe space, man. It's a safe
space.
It's a safe
space. Somebody comment actually said that they appreciate this being a safe space. And we are glad that you feel that way. But I don't know, gentlemen. Do we want to get in one more question? Do we feel like we I don't know, folks are still arriving. We got 20 people on. That's still listening. I don't know.
Rocking with us. I appreciate it. Let me just apologize to Tamisha Hill. I wasn't trying to explain history to you. I was just, trying to let you know that, we did study these things like you have apparently. And I want you to know that I wasn't trying to diminish or your knowledge base or anything like that. It's just talk, just having an intellectual discussion about some very hot potatoes. That's all.
What happened here?
We go to a few more comments, and the thing is, like I said, we'll be back on discussing the same topic for the next couple of weeks after we talk about Malcolm X next week.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody has a question here.
My
question is, how is critical race theory actually presenting this information? I've heard two versions of that suppresses the truth, the other in support of, and I found that this is where everyone is stuck.
Okay, so like I said, so critical race theory is just it's looking at policies that is looking at policies or laws that's been made, and looking at how it's been affected, how it's been affected. So we're looking at laws, policies, and institutions that uphold and reproduce racial inequalities. I'm trying to look at exactly. So like we're looking at school to prison pipelines, denials of affordable housings, the rates of death of Black women in childbirth, and those. So we're looking at those type of things in relationship to race. So that means those things are quantitative. So right. So it's like so you're looking at quantitatively. So you're looking at data, and then you're comparing those things to race. So why is it more Black men in jail versus white men? Why is that? It got to be a reason why. What happened? Especially if there were some policies that's changed that. So then you could look at maybe the crack law that happened, right? So that law put a lot of men in jail in the early 80s and 90s, right? So that's a law so that you will look at. Pardon me?
For life.
So you would look at that and see how it affected communities and what happened, and then you also look at those policies and how it affects other policies. All right, so that's what that is. It has nothing to do with having white people feel inferior or feeling sad. That's something totally different.
That's a guilt trip.
So these are talking points that the politicians are using to be elected. So anytime you hear these things being used now, trust me, you're gonna hear a lot now because you have midterm elections coming up. So right now you hear a lot of stuff being used now because of midterm elections. So you can hear two things coming up now. You hear abortion and critical race theory because they're hot topics now and people want to be elected. But the two things, so anybody talking about, it being taught in high schools or lower, that's not the case. That's not what it's about. History is definitely, history should be taught, but anything about this critical looking at race, it's not. It's really not.
I'd like to just acknowledge Patricia Cayley. I'm nearly 70 years old, and I didn't learn about the black codes until 2 years ago. I didn't know about sunset laws. I'm not saying that first grade kids should learn this, but high school kids should. There should be more across the entire curriculum about how minorities were treated throughout our history. And I agree with that. And thank you, Patricia, for your comment. That's deep. She's 70, didn't know about the black codes, y'all. You know what I mean? That speaks to the intellectual recalcitrance of the education system in this country that just is not moving properly. It's, and as far as making people feel guilty, I said this earlier in the show, we feel bad when we learn. At least I, speaking for myself, I felt bad when I was learning about slavery. I was the only black kid in the class until about 6th or 7th grade. So I felt horrible learning about slavery, being the only brother in the room, being taught this. And I can only imagine what it was doing for or to my white counterparts in the classroom. Some of these issues need to be discussed at a younger age, maybe not first grade, but I think kids are a lot more flexible and a lot more resilient than we know. And I don't think, and as far as Ron DeSantis' comment about critical race theory teaching kids to hate each other, the current education system isn't doing that because kids hate shit out of each other by 7th or 8th grade. You know what I mean? Kids hate each other worse than anybody I know by 7th, 8th grade. Kids are filled with hatred for each other. So the current education system isn't doing anything any better. So I don't see why we couldn't, and since it's not being taught K through 12 in the entire country, talking about critical race theory, it's not being taught anywhere K through 12, but it could probably solve some of the problems if it was given an opportunity, given a shot, That's a good comment. That's a good one there.
Which one you got?
The probation officer,
Yes,
Giselle Lee Coleman, about seeing disparities close up and personal every day. The disparities are definitely there. It's the deniers that give me the most frustration. Those who deny the actual situation. Like, no, there is no systematic racism in the country because we have black quarterbacks in the NFL. There's no systematic racism in the country because Kanye West has, so many Grammys, It's the deniers of the situation that just irk me to no end. Like, how can you deny what is so basic and so plain every day? It's on the news, it's in schools, it's all over the internet, but they just don't see it as such.
Okay, well, hear about this comment here.
You got a hot one?
Michael says that all mention of race should be purged from every government law, policy, or process. We just we just should act like there's no such thing as race at all, right?
I
Right?
Yeah, but we can't because, your first racist joke wasn't told to you by your teacher or, a government employee or a politician. Your first racist joke was told to you by Uncle John. You know what I mean? And you can purge racism. I mean, that's a racist talking point. There are no racist laws. There's no law that is specifically set and written down to harm Black people specifically. There's a talking point. There are no racist laws. There's only racist people. And you can purge the race out of law, but you can't purge the racism out of people. And I think that's what critical race theory is seeking to do, is to try and address the systems of systematic racism and how it's permeated itself into every aspect of the very fiber of American society. I think,
I think that's the point, because what this says, what they're saying is that even though these laws are being made, they didn't work.
No,
because at some point the law needs to be implemented, and they need to be put in place with people. And so even though the laws are being written, and so this is the critical part. They're looking at the law, looking at how it's written, and it's written by well-intentioned white people, right? So they look at the law, they look at affirmative action, they look at those type of things, right? And so at the same time, look at affirmative action, then they look at also look at affirmative action, how that's written. Then you look at, but they didn't address, like, you think about like college, right? We understand that college has the same type of affirmative action for people who, they say that if you went to the University of Michigan and your daddy went to the University of Michigan, you can get in too, right? So if you have lower test scores, they don't got to be just as high as the next person. You can get in. I mean, I'm not saying you get in with a 0.92, but you can get in. Same way, if you have money, you can get in. There's points you get for being legacy. Same amount of points you get in if you have money. Same amount of points you get in if you are a minority. Same amount of points if you play a sport or if you play an instrument, or if you are an African American or whatever. You get points to qualify into these universities. But race was picked. It has been picked for affirmative action. But these same points are used for legacy. So why aren't people saying, well, listen, know what? Affirmative action is wrong, but so is legacy admissions also. Or being rich or whatever. It's not talked about. And probably the same is probably more people being admitted into these universities that are legacy admissions than they are African American admissions. Because keep in mind, you think about percentage wise, a university probably has 75% white, 75% of white population, and maybe a university may have 15% black, right? So you just think, I mean, it got to be more legacy than there could be. You know what I'm saying? So it just has to be. That's just, I mean, by sheer numbers. But race is an easier topic. But let's look at it. Critical race was let's look at let's look at affirmative action and why it was wrong. How did the policy how it was written, how did the people who wrote it, quote unquote, good meaning white folks who didn't know what they were doing when they wrote it, how they get it wrong? How did they implement it wrong? Because it was implemented wrong. They thought they was doing the right thing, but with their guilt, they did it the wrong way. They put in action the wrong way. And now it became a big mess. So let's look at it and let's examine it. And then if we need to change it or do it the right way, now we can look at it and say, listen, now when we're making laws that address race, now we'll know what needs to be done. But if we don't address it, we're gonna keep making the same mistakes. And so that's why this theory is important, because if not, we're gonna keep making the same mistakes. And these, if we don't address it, if we don't study it, these are going to affect our children and our grandchildren. But if we don't tell people this is not what critical race theory is, this, and not making white people feel bad, they're gonna, we gotta start telling people this is what it is. It's not that.
Wow. We are still getting a lot of great comments, man. People really rocking with us tonight.
Yeah. People are locked in. This is definitely a topic that I think it really hits home for a lot of people, because I think they're very frustrated at how this has been going, how it's been, what they've been seeing in the news and what they've been and maybe experienced with. I'm really curious if anyone has any, maybe kids in the school system right now that have had some arguments on a local level around critical race theory. Like, what's been the dialogue? What's being said by parents and students? We've been reading this in the news. I wanted to, and I haven't heard any firsthand accounts in the comments as of yet. I'm just kind of curious, but because K-12 is what's really been at the basis of this whole argument. Well, I mean, as of late, in terms of why the politicians are getting involved, you just saying, just talking about, you're teaching kids to hate America and to hate each other. We know that's not the case. Just to get a little bit into the next question, I don't think we're going to have time to really take it on full steam, but I want to address one point, and that is, how did CRT become a controversial topic today? And Amar, you sort of led into it already, why it's so controversial. But I think what we haven't said here is that, well, we kind of said it, but white people began to feel as if they want to play victim now. You're going to actually teach something in school that's going to teach them to hate me. I'm now the victim, and now they're claiming racism against white people. The saying is critical race theory is a direct effect of now racism against white people, saying that now you're teaching them to hate us and not to like us, and we're going to look bad. What it is white guilt. It's exactly what this is. We talked about it on the show many times before about white guilt, and how instead of really becoming honest and forthcoming about the true history of this country, you can't hide it. There's nowhere to run. It is what it is. But to sit here and say, now I'm the victim, now you're teaching people to hate me, is completely ridiculous. It is what it is. You did what you did. There's no way to erase it. There's nowhere to just whitewash it out of history. And what I really feel is, if what people feel like now is that we should be proud. I mean, I'm sorry, not to where we're proud, but we should be thankful. We should be thankful, Negroes, that you didn't have to go through slavery. Let's just forget about it. You didn't go through that. So why are you even talking about it? Why are you guys even teaching this kind of thing? The white folks now are your friends, right? These are great people that you know. These are no longer those in the big houses. These are no longer ones who were at the auction block prying over your mouth to see your teeth, or measuring you up and your weight and to see if you're a good buck or anything like that. Those aren't the white people you know now. This is what I feel like what they're wanting us to do, is to forget all this and to just now look at everybody as if it never happened. And if you do teach their history of what really happened, I'm going to look bad. Now I'm not going to appear to be this good, meaningful white person that you know me to be all this time. But that's not, in fact, what's going on. But that's now the argument that's being placed, is why it's becoming so controversial, because it's now reverse racism. Now you're trying to attack me. Now you're trying to get me to be the person that's hated, and that's not the basis of this at all.
Right? The arrogance of you, though, that you can't do no wrong. That's the issue. It's so fine that you can sit back and say, I didn't do anything wrong. I understand if you didn't, or nobody did anything wrong. But the thought that to sit back and say that, I want you to sit back and say you're saying that there was no wrong done. So that's the problem. You're saying that there was no wrong done, and no one needs to address this wrong. Because at no point the wrong has ever been addressed. We have just moved on.
Never. It has never been addressed, and it's there's also been a lot of finger pointing and blame gaming going on. You know, like the jails are full of black people because black people are a community of criminals. You know, or we don't prescribe pain medication to black people on an equitable basis because black people are better at taking pain, or you know, they have a higher threshold for pain. You know, just racist rhetoric that permeates American society every day in almost every aspect. You know, I don't know if any of y'all have ever lived in a big city, but not being able to get a cab in the middle of the night after getting off late work, you know, cabs drive by, and these are Arabs driving these cabs and Indians, and you know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, what is going on?
But see, keep in mind, they came here understanding what America is. Keep in mind, America is understanding that there's somebody that needs to be on the bottom token. So they come in here understanding what America is, understanding that somebody has to be on the bottom. So they come here, if somebody's on the bottom, who's on the bottom currently?
Yeah.
So they come here understanding that only way America works, this form of capitalism works with African Americans on the bottom.
Yeah.
This form of capitalism works with us on the bottom, so they're gonna come here working, understanding that if we're working with us on the bottom, so it's easy for them to come here and work that way, and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works. That's how it works. I can do what I need to do because the system works with me with them on the bottom.
Yeah.
I could profit off of them because that's how the system works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's not even about profit when you talk about. I mean, we don't even have cabs anymore. Uber and Lyft have eliminated the cab industry pretty much, but you talk about people who don't even want your money. I don't even want your money. You black, you standing there, it's 2 a.m. I don't even want your money because in my mind, the propensity for you to rob me is greater than the propensity for you to pay me. You know what I mean? So I don't even want your potentially take your money from you in a legitimate business transaction. And I think that is something that you know, we're fighting against, you know, because they will. My girlfriend's birthday was a little while ago, and we wanted to go to this Brazilian steakhouse where they just keep bringing food to your table, you know, and it's great. It's $69 a person. It's great.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And I was planning to go to this place, and then somebody chimed in and said, no, that's the place where they wouldn't let the brother in for wearing his jeans and Air Force Ones. He had on jeans and Air Force Ones. They wouldn't let him in. But there were people in the restaurants in jeans and sneakers, white folks in jeans and sneakers. This was last year. This was a big thing in Atlanta last year. They didn't even want this party's money. Like, no, you can keep your money because you got on jeans and sneakers. We don't allow that in here unless you white. You can keep your money. We don't even need your money. We don't even want your money. Don't even come up in here. You know what I mean? Because and racism and white supremacy cost this country trillions of dollars every year, trillions, you know, because the way things play out in the political system, the way things play out in the criminal justice system, the way things play out in the educational system is costing them money, but it's money that they're willing to pay.
Willing to pay, so that goes into like the police departments are willing to pay, in support of these police officers killing and mistreating people. They're willing to pay to support.
Yeah, that's why I think
lawsuits. So every time somebody do something, whether it's not at the level of killing, whether it's whatever, maybe they just billy club somebody. They got there's settlements.
Yeah, they're willing.
And they're paying. And so. And the city ends up paying for it regardless. But keep in mind how much money that is, how much money that's being wasted versus just saying, get this shit right the first time.
Right. Paying out.
But we keep going through the same thing over and over again, right? The same stuff over and over again. Like it's normal.
Nothing normal about it unless you're an American citizen. Nothing normal about it. Unless you're a citizen of this country, you don't have to deal with this kind of stuff. And that's the ugliest truth about it right there.
I see somebody in the comments talking about the great Abe, and like I think I said it earlier, but like I said, keep in mind we learned that Abe freed the slaves, but he didn't free any slaves. Not with the Emancipation Proclamation. He didn't free any of them because he couldn't have, because he freed slaves in the rebellion states, and so the rebellion states had already left the Union. We're talking about those states that had left already. They were not. He had no control of those states anymore. So he couldn't tell those states what to do anymore. So he already left. But anyway, he's a great emancipator of slaves that he had no control over anymore. But we get lied to all the time. You see anything else, G?
I don't see necessarily questions. There's still a lot of people just commenting, which I definitely, people kind of going back and forth with each other. But as was stated earlier, we're gonna have a 3-part series of this. So this is not it. And somebody wanted to have a perspective of someone white. Actually, our brother happens to be white, and he will be on next week. So you will hear from him out of his mouth what he thinks about critical race theory as we get back together next week. So we've been on almost 2 hours. I know 16 people are still here, so I really appreciate that. But let's pick this back up. Not next week though. We have a very, very special broadcast coming next week that I think that you all are going to be in for a treat for. I know some of you all, I think I'm not recognizing a lot of names tonight, so this might be your first time hearing us tonight. But we've been on for this is now going on maybe 3 years now that we've been on doing this. So we had a special broadcast last year honoring Malcolm X's birthday, and we're going to do it again this year as well. So May 19th, we are celebrating Malcolm X's birthday. El Haj Malik El Shabazz. And we did a special panel discussion that you're going to really get a treat next week. So please come back next week to hear that. And then we're going to pick this up the following week. We're going to pick this discussion back up. And we'd be glad to have all of you back for that. So, that's kind of where we're at. Any last words?
I'd like to thank everybody for your comments and questions. It's really a great thing to see everybody so engaged and involved. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't have too much to say. A couple of weeks, I'm ready.
Yeah, we get right back into it.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Yeah. All right, we'll be back. So,
all right.
Next week, hopefully,
we got the outro. Don't we got the outro, G?
Yeah. I'm sorry. We do.
I ain't seen it yet, so I don't want to say.
We didn't have the intro. We just came on.
Right, we didn't have an intro. That's right.
We didn't have an intro. So yeah. But thanks everybody for checking us out and rocking with us the whole way through.
We didn't, but I think there was some announcements I wanted to. That was a part of that outro. So let me just share this for everybody. Take a look. Yeah. Another thing is our YouTube. I saw some people were in the YouTube comments today, which was good.
Yeah.
We want to keep that up. We are trying to get that page off the ground, so everybody can go and follow us on your YouTube right now. I know a lot of y'all are just on Facebook, but go to our YouTube page. We're trying to really grow that page as well. So we're broadcasting in both places. But we also want to get to the YouTube audience as well. So tell everybody to go follow our 360 Collective page on YouTube, like, subscribe. I'm sorry, I'm going to use YouTube language. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so when we go live, you'll know. All right, everybody. Thanks again for rocking with us all night long, and we will see you all next
Yeah.
week.
All right.